Welcome to Picture the Professor, the sports betting show brought to you by a real statistics professor and his actual cousin Jared. Week 5 is what is ahead of us. Week 4 is what's behind us. Real quick off the top, week 4, I feel like if you survived it, congratulations. It felt like one of the weirdest weeks I can remember in quite some time. What was your take?
Yep. It was just absolutely insane. Like when you thought that something couldn't be one-upped, it was one-upped. It's like, the stakes kept on getting higher and higher, and, the level for how weird things were gonna get, just kept getting higher. So, yeah, it was definitely a very interesting week 4, a week where you didn't feel like there were a ton of great matchups on the board. Still had a pretty exciting weekend.
Yeah, and we'll talk about some of that here. Really throughout the show, we'll kind of reference back some of the things from last week, trying to figure out how do we learn from it, how do we get better from it, and then, of course, a few lamentations as well. A few pats in the back, I guess. I don't know. I don't really know what we're doing here. We'll see where the show goes.
Yeah.
If you are looking to become a better sports bettor, you are in the right place. The biggest thing here is we try to tell people, how do you beat the books? Well, you do it by winning more when you win than you lose when you lose. And you do that with partially the right mindset. And that's something that we try to talk about here. What are the things we should be thinking about? What are the key numbers we should be thinking about? How do we get in the right frame of mind to approach this stuff? And then, of course, having the right model. And that's not to say that Sideline is the perfect model for this, but we have a very good, a very useful model in helping us attack these games. It's player-based, and that gets more important as the season goes along, of course, with injuries. One game is random, and my goodness, every week it shows we see this in college football. There are some random things happening, but the model wins in the long run. That's why we talk about price and value so much, because it's all about that price in the long run. If you have this situation 10 times in the season, fire it all 10 and know that one game weird things are going to happen, but in the long run, it'll work out for you. That's why we always say things like there are no such things as locks in betting. So anybody telling you there's locks, that's just not the case unless they've got inside information. If so, give them my phone number because I'd like that as well.
Yeah.
Join Patreon for access to every A-grade play and price cutoffs, detailed breakdowns, metrics for every game, and a Discord chat with experts, with smart bettors, and a great community. The Patreon honor roll picks exclusive to honor roll were the shining spot last week. 6-2-1 made us 4 units on those picks. The A grades slightly below water last week, right around break even for the season. Cousin Jared, we always talk that first part of the year is a little bit bumpy, and we're kind of heading into the part now where we feel hopefully better about. Unfortunately, we talk about this time of year, the books get a little bit smarter as well. Hopefully we've gotten smarter quicker than they have at this point, right?
Yeah, and I think also just maybe just as important, not overreacting, maybe where some other people might be overreacting at this point, which I think is where we kind of thread the needle. Look at, hey, here are the things that you really need to pay attention to, but hey, here was the outcome of this specific game, but these are the weird things that happened. You can't count on those things happening again. So I think we do a really good job of kind of reacting appropriately is what I would say.
That's very well said. That's what the model's trying to do. It's trying to figure out how do we react appropriately. And there's situations, and we'll talk about a couple of them I'm already thinking of, where the model has really overreacted to how a team's played so far this season. And we'll try to look at that and say, why is that the case? Because there's other times where the model's really underreacting and saying, not so fast, my friend. And we try to look at these and dive down into some of those specifics. We can do it in a lot of ways for each individual game. We unfortunately try not to make the show too long by doing that, but these are conversations that we are thrilled to have if we just, had the ability to have, 10 hours of content on this. But we have these conversations over on our Discord, which you can get exclusively through signing up on Patreon. That link's in the website for the honor roll package, $19.99 a month. Folks, help us out over there. Help us keep the lights running. This is how I pay groceries. I do this and I look after my family. And so we really appreciate your support there. Cousin Jared, real quick, a recap of week 4, what we like to do here, the good, the bad, the ugly. What was good for you in week 4?
The good thing for us, and especially since, we were laying 2.5 with UNLV, was that UNLV Miami, Ohio game where you messaged me in the first half of that game and said, what were we thinking? The 9 a.m. body clock game for UNLV, this was terrible. And then we were like, oh, wait, never mind. We're all good. We're going to cover. And then Miami, Ohio had a kickoff return for a touchdown, an interception return for a touchdown. And we were
in a hot second. I mean, they tied it up and then they were down 14 with like 5 minutes of of real time.
And then UNLV just slowly chipped back away, tied it up late. But then Miami, Ohio goes right back down the field. Looks like they're going to kick the game-winning field goal. I'm going to say our boy, don't even know who it was, but somebody on UNLV's defense punches the ball out, gets a fumble. They go down the field, kick a game-winning field goal as time expires. It was a crazy back-and-forth game. We thought we were out of it. We thought we were in it. We thought we were out of it again, and then ended up getting the cover with us laying the 2.5 points. It was just a great all-around college football game. Fireworks, excitement, dumb plays. It just had everything you could ask for.
I'm going to say that we went 2-1 in our weeknight picks, the Thursday night, Friday night picks. And I swear last year, every single Saturday, I woke up and we were starting off our ledger negative for the week, like every single one last year. I don't know how it happened. And so just to start off Saturday with the positive number was exciting for me because we were just cursed there. Like, I don't get it. We talk about weird things in college football, and that was one of them from last year. So that was exciting. Because Jared, what was bad for you?
Let's see. There are more than a few options. I think what I am going to go with, though, just because I think there's been a little bit less discourse around this, mostly because, what happened with Oklahoma State. They looked terrible. Clemson looked bad. But the bigger thing to me was Wisconsin just looks like they are in complete disarray. They lost to Maryland 27-10 at home. That game was never close. It was never in doubt. Maryland was up 20-0 at halftime. They were up 27-3, like with 3 minutes left in the game. Wisconsin got a garbage time touchdown there. Just things have not gone as we thought they would when Luke Fickell went to Wisconsin. I think everybody thought that was a match made in heaven. And
we both liked it.
Yeah, and it has not worked out, and somehow things have gotten progressively worse. So, I don't like to talk about, bad kind of things that aren't working out for teams. You try to be more positive on this show, but I feel like just Wisconsin's in a bad place. But I feel like it's being overshadowed by, like I said, Clemson, Oklahoma State, some of those other teams. But man, Wisconsin's in a bad spot right now.
Yeah, I mean, I can't not just point out what I want to talk about, of course, is you already touched on it, right? Oklahoma State and Clemson. I just have to point out, 2 weeks ago, two Power 5 teams played badly enough that they fired their coach immediately. And then we're discussing, is that going to happen this week with Oklahoma State and Clemson, with two guys who've been there for so long, have become synonymous with those programs. And,
I am an encyclopedia of college football knowledge. Couldn't tell you when Gundy started at Oklahoma State. I think Les Miles, was the head coach there before Gundy was. But what year was that? I have no idea. Literally almost as far back as I can possibly remember, Gundy has been the college coach there. And that's saying something if I can't remember the year that Gundy took over there.
Yeah. Between that and Clemson and Oklahoma State's had some success, of course. Clemson's had, national championship. And to see both of those programs just not even competitive in their games this weekend was just a bit of a surprise, I think. Because Jared, what was ugly for you?
So there's no, sometimes this is almost like a therapy session, right? Us kind of going back and forth and talking about some plays that didn't go well, or, trying to get the viewers to kind of empathize with us. I'm not looking for any explanation here because I don't think there is any. But South Alabama losing by 18 at home to Coastal Carolina after they looked completely competent against Auburn the weekend before, South Alabama, that is. They lost by 16. They performed admirably for a smaller school going up against an SEC school on the road. Coastal Carolina getting drilled at home to East Carolina last week. And then this game, it was close in the beginning and Coastal Carolina just pulled away. It was one of maybe the most baffling outcome of the weekend before Cal laid a goose egg at San Diego State and lost by 34 when we were laying 12 points or with Cal. Those two games, it's just, sometimes I kept thinking to myself, and we say it on the show here quite often, but these are 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, and there's just going to be random variance is going to have a field day at times. And so those were two games that you just have to let those go. You have to flush them. They're not relevant in any way. They are complete outliers. Yeah, that's just sometimes inexplicable things like that.
And to be fair, you sometimes have those on the other side where you're on the right side of something where you kind of thought there might have been a little bit of edge and it's the easy runaway winner. It's the same thing. You can't get too high on your horse when you have that go for you because some games are just so far out there, you know? And that's what we always talk about the big picture, right? It's not about necessarily how we do in this one game or these 2 games or even these 5 games, whatever. It's the big picture because variance is real and variance is a really hard concept for us as humans to really understand. There's a reason we say all the time, variance is a 4-letter word, right? It can be super frustrating and just trying to keep our brains, even keel through all this and say, yeah, some of those weird things, it is what it is. We're just going to move forward, and people might be lamenting the same thing with Wisconsin on the other side of that. You mentioned that earlier, and we happen to be on the right side of that one.
Right.
We meant, taking all those points, mentioning, dabbling with some half units on the money lines, things like that work out really well for you. Then sometimes the flip happens too, right? We got to try to take it all in stride. I'm going to say Fresno State, the way that we lost that one, the island special that nobody was awake to watch. And so viewer, you probably aren't aware of how we laid 2.5 with Fresno and they won by 2. And so if you took the money line, congrats for foreseeing the fact that we would start off the game where Hawaii would get a safety, which of course is not a 2-0 score, not overly common. And Fresno State would miss a 2-point conversion. And then of course Hawaii would score with 10 seconds left, down 8. And at that point you're thinking, don't score. Fresno wins by 8 or score and get the 2. We go to overtime. Not that we're, locked to win overtime, but we got a chance. Of course, they missed the 2-point conversion. Fresno wins by 2.
Right.
Just, and I wasn't awake to watch it, thank God, but that's ugly.
Brutal all the way around.
Brutal all the way around.
Yeah.
We'll move forward here. 4 games of the week, none of them, and the noon time slot for Saturday. Big Noon Saturday letting us down here, apparently. LSU at Ole Miss. Cousin Jared, LSU's defense, fine. Very good. Exactly how good this LSU team is interesting because we're relating it back to Clemson and Florida, who've looked questionable.
Right.
Poor Florida, I think, against Miami, just Lagway at this point just looks like,
he
just put pressure on him and he didn't know what to do.
Yeah,
he's just shell-shocked. He's scarred at this point.
I was going to say broken.
Yeah,
he looked almost how it seems.
That offensive line and whatever. So I don't really know how good this LSU defense is. Otto has a number 6. We know the offense is questionable, right? And that's why they're offense at number 25, which is not up to standards for what you would expect with Garrett Nussmeier, who the model might have as the best quarterback in football at this point. That tells you the concerns we have for the rest of the offense. So, Cousin Jared, how in the world are we going to pick LSU when we're so down on them at Ole Miss as underdogs? Model says they win 54% of the time. What is the model seeing? What are you seeing that makes you like plus odds with LSU? Because this feels like one where everybody's going to be afraid to play LSU. Yep. Why aren't you afraid to play LSU?
I think you could kind of flip this around and LSU or Ole Miss, their defense they looked really good last week against Tulane. I'll give you that. But their defense has seemed a little bit spotty this year, maybe a little bit spottier than it has been in years past. I know that the past couple of years have been on a little bit of an island with Ole Miss playing a lot of their unders because their defense was, a little bit underrated. And also, it's just the byproduct of playing with the type of offensive system that they have, that it kind of made it difficult to kind of, settle on an Ole Miss under. I think Ole Miss's defense has regressed a little bit, and I think LSU's defense has really stepped up. They've played really, really well this season. My biggest concern with LSU is them not being able to run the ball effectively. They weren't able to do that last year. They haven't been able to do that so far this year. But I think their offense can do enough, and then they can kind of, rely on how well their defense has been playing. But for me, this is also all about the number. I mean, plus 110 is probably about where my cutoff is. We're really close to it. This just feels like a toss-up game, and this is kind of our bread and butter here, I would say.
I was going to go from it every once in a while. I haven't mentioned it this year. I like to think about what Uncle Jerry would do. I don't have an Uncle Jerry, but Uncle Jerry is the persona that I think of. Either a Boston accent or a New Jersey accent. I'm not really sure. He's the guy who does a 3-leg parlay. It just nothing but 3-leg parlays. It always wins 2 out of 3, and he always complains about the one he loses. And I keep telling Uncle Jerry, again, who doesn't exist, stop doing 3-leg parlays, and he just won't listen. Uncle Jerry is like never going to bet LSU, and so I'm gonna bet LSU. That's my quiet.
There you go.
Everybody's down on LSU. And so why not go ahead and take them? It doesn't always work, obviously. It's just sometimes you're getting a little bit of value. I think we're getting a little bit of value here because people are a little bit down on LSU at this point because their offense has struggled and everyone's looking at Clemson and Florida and being like, oh, maybe LSU isn't as good as we thought. The model said that last week, that LSU wasn't as good as we thought. Like, nothing's changed. Like, the model's still seeing them as good but flawed. Of course, when you look at college football, that's like almost every team at this point. I'm not sure there's a runaway team yet at this point. We'll talk about a couple of the favorites later, but I mean, they've all got flaws. So, they're on the road, of course, but I'm like you, plus odds in a coin toss game. Model says LSU should be slightly favored. Too good to pass up in the long run. It's no different than a number of games like this we've taken. The most recent one I can think of off the top of my head, Nebraska, Michigan, didn't get that one. The one before that, Clemson, Georgia Tech, we did get that one. You take enough of these, you'll go 500 and you make money. And that's really all we're about here, just slowly making more when you win than you lose when you lose.
Right.
Also at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, a conference game, I guess, Ohio State at Washington. I don't know when that'll not be weird.
Yeah.
Ohio State falling to number 2 in sidelines ratings, whatever. We'll talk about number 1 later. Obviously still a very good team.
Yeah.
Maybe the least flawed team so far. The team I have the least issue with is Ohio State at this point. We're not going to touch a side. They should win this game handily. And so we're going to go under 53.5. A-grade play for us. Here's the model says 45 is where this number should be. So we're getting those key wins on 47, 48, 51, 52. A lot of real value here in a number that should be a lot lower. Because, Jared, my only fear with this game is look at Ohio State's pace, number 134. That's been a byproduct of playing a Texas team who also has no desire to play fast and playing a bunch of nobodies where they're just trying to get through the game as fast as possible. If they accelerate that pace a little bit, then I think there's probably more than 45.5 points on average in this one. But the reason why this still makes a lot of sense and why we love the A grades is because even if they play a little bit faster, when you look at Washington's pace, it's not going to be fast enough to say that this total shouldn't be more like 47, 48, something like that, maybe around 50. We're still getting plus expected value here, even if it's not quite as much plus expected value as the model thinks. That's the benefit of the A grade. The gap is big enough that even if we're off a little bit, and we're always off a little bit, that's just the way it goes, then we still got some value here. Because, Jared, what's your take?
When I look at this game, this feels very, and I'm not saying Washington is on this level, but this feels very similar to the Ohio State-Texas game to me, in that Ohio State, young quarterback, first kind of big road test. I feel like they're going to play things conservative. They have a defense they can lean on. They're not going to try to do anything really, just kind of shocking offensively. I think they're just going to kind of stick to the fundamentals, run the ball, not try to get flashy. And while I think that this Washington team is definitely improved from what they've been in years past, I just think that this Ohio State defense is a test that, obviously they haven't had so far this season. DeMond Williams Jr., I think is going to be a really good player. I think he may still be a freshman. I think he may have only played in 4 games last year, still got the red shirt. He's either a freshman or a sophomore for Washington. Going to be a really good quarterback. Unfortunately, that's not going to show up against Ohio State. I don't think. So for me, for Ohio State, this feels like a just be conservative offense, build the quarterback's confidence, don't do anything flashy, win this game 2010.
I will say that if you really think that this game goes over, I think you have to think it's going to come from Ohio State. And I could tell you, looking under the hood at the model, looking at the player rankings, the model loves Julian Sayin. The model obviously loves the whole receiving core for Ohio State, best wide receiver in the country, probably best tight end in the country as well. It's a heck of a combination. And the model says they're still only going to score so many points because it's a road game and because Washington is a relatively tough place to play. That game place is going to be, even though it's going to be a 12:30 local kick, that place is going to be rocking. And, they just haven't shown the urgency to try to go out there and run as many plays as possible. And I don't see why you would want to start that here. I don't think that's going to really change much. They've got the skills to go in there and win handily, and then they go do that, and there's just no reason to turn this into a track. And so it's not to say that it can't happen. And 55, of course, is a very common score. That's obviously your biggest fear playing this under, but again, in our opinion, this is being, the average college football game last few years has had about this many points. And that's how the market's treating it like average. And it's like, I know that the weakest unit on this field is Washington's defense, but this game's at Washington. That matters. If this was at Ohio State, I'd go Ohio State at home against that defense. If it doesn't travel across the country very well, Ohio State may score 45 on their own. And then I don't think Ohio State's going to score 45 at Washington. I could be wrong.
And I mean, look at the pace of both of these teams. I mean, neither team.
No urgency.
Yeah, no urgency at all.
Jamal Williams started 2 games last year, actually played in 13. So I think he played in every single game last year. So he lost his red shirt. I did also have to point out, you said Washington, as good as they've been in the last couple of years, it's just 1 year. That's how many things have happened in our lives, I think, recently. The year before that was the year they made the playoff.
Wow, really? It went bad that fast with home dude. He was took over, and then all of a sudden he was gone. Yeah. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah, it happened fast. It's just the way, but also that's how many things in life have happened. To the night, big games here, Oregon and Penn State, and man, this is the one.
Yeah.
Both games, really, both the Big Ten and the SEC, but this is the one I think everyone's looking at because, of course, you have Penn State, who Big Ten favorite coming in potentially. I know they've started off slow, so now I think everyone's saying Ohio State. The model wasn't really that high on Penn State to start the season because you were a little surprised. It hasn't gotten any favorable with what they've done. And I know people will say, well, they haven't played anybody, blah, blah, blah. But part of what the model does is look at how we expect you to perform. And again, it's a player-based model, but it's adding up all those pieces and saying, we expected you to do a little better against some of those teams than you did. And because you didn't, that's going to hurt you, right? Oregon's the other way around. The model wasn't overly high on Oregon, but it's looked really good. And people will say, oh, they haven't played anybody. But the fact that Oregon is destroying teams by not playing anybody, and Penn State's playing standard Big Ten football, that has me worried here for Penn State. We're going to take Oregon plus 3.5. It's a B grade. I like the money line as well, but this game could easily be a field goal game. And so taking 3.5 is not crazy at all. But Kissinger, to me, this boils down to until Penn State beats a top Big Ten team. And I mean that is it one of those years Michigan's a top 5 team or Oregon's a top 5 team or Ohio State's a top 5 team? They've yet to do it. And people are like, oh, well, they don't lose whiteout games. Well, they usually play their whiteout game against a Wisconsin or against a Maryland. Not a bad team, but they don't typically play them against an Ohio State. And I'm guessing I don't know, maybe the last time they did against a big team like that, maybe they won. But if so, that was a long time ago. They have not beaten Ohio State. They've not beaten the top Michigan teams. They could not hang at all last year with Oregon. And I just don't see how this will be any different. We're going to take the Ducks here. Cousin Jared, do you like the plus 3.5 or the money line more? Which one's better for you?
I think I would probably lean a little bit more towards the money line. I'm like you. I can't honestly what I would do, maybe what I've already done. Split my bet here just because I'm like you. I can see this being a close game. But my thing always with Oregon is, Dan Lanning is going to do whatever the optimal, decision making is as far as going forward on 4th down versus taking the field goal, all of that stuff. He's going to be aggressive. That could maybe potentially harm you taking the 3.5, but what it will always do is optimize the chance of winning the game. So I personally would, if I only had to pick one, I would probably take the money line. But like I said, I think this is a great opportunity to split your bet here.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Similar situation here for the SEC game, Alabama and Georgia. Folks, I don't know how this opened 3.5. That blows my mind. I feel like, yes, I saw what happened to Alabama against Florida State. I've seen what's happened with Alabama on the road these last 2 years with Kalen DeBoer.
Mm-hmm.
Sideline has them number 1. I stand by. It goes back to how you play against your competition matters. Obviously, Florida State's much improved.
Yep.
Do I think Alabama is the best team in the country at this point? No, I don't. I would still have Ohio State number 1 personally. But I think what the model is trying to tell us is, there's still something here with Alabama. Now, if you want to say, I haven't seen it on the road yet, I totally get that. But my mind is still blown that this opened 3.5 because I'm not the only nerd out here running a model who thinks that Alabama is the better team.
Right.
And so they had to know they were going to get money coming in at plus 3.5 in Alabama. Kind of like with Oregon, it's like, hey, we're grabbing that 3.5 because I really am surprised it's 3.5. I feel like people got to realize Oregon's as good, if not the better team. And so that should be lower. And the same thing here. I'm a little bit surprised. But on this one, The model says Alabama wins this 58% of the time. I don't, that feels high. I feel like it's probably more 50%, but even we talk about it all the time, 50% game plus odds. We're not going to win them all. We don't have to. We're just trying to win half of them, right?
Yep, that's exactly right. The thing that I would say is every Alabama loss or every poor performance they've had that we can think of the past year and a half since DeBoer's been there has been in a game when they've been big favorites. They have not necessarily had issues. I'm not saying that they've won every game, but they have not had any issues in these, games that are projected to be close, a team that they can, get up for and really be gung-ho about. Because no matter what we say, looking back at it now, it's easy to say that Alabama should have been better prepared to play Florida State. But, I mean, it's a team that went 2-10 last year, and I'm sitting here writing before the season started. I mean, do we really know if Mike Norvell is a half-decent coach? He had Jordan Travis played well for a year and a half. And other than that, we hadn't seen anything out of Florida State during his time there. So I'm going to go back to, in the big games, Alabama has come out and played well. They beat this Georgia team last year. Plus 130 just seems like too much. I feel like I can point out flaws on both of these teams to the point that you've already made about every team in college football so far this season. So sign me up for the plus 130 with a guy like Kalen DeBoer, who in a big game, when his players are already buying in, I think he's going to give them a fighting chance for sure.
And I feel like, we spend a lot of time here. I feel like we've spent a lot of time justifying Alabama because the fact that the model loves them so much. And again, remember, right, all models are wrong. Some models are useful. Every model, every projection we've ever made is wrong. There's no way that we actually know the true talent level and how good these teams are. We're just trying to get close. And so if you sit here and say, well, clearly there's something off in the model for having Alabama number one, I would point to, like I said earlier, because Jared, you just mentioned, right, there's so many flawed teams at this point that it's really hard to say, exactly what to adjust and how to make that all make sense cohesively. And that's why we have a set of rules that we make for these. And we let the outcome, let the model kind of do what it does. And as much as we talk about Alabama, we also need to talk about Georgia, right? Seidman has them at number 9, and they're obviously not ranked there in the polls, and I get that, but they've had their issues as well, just like we talked about Penn State, right? How you look against in these early season games gives us some information. Now, these games here, these 2 night games, will give us more information than everything else that we've seen this season combined. But we don't have this game yet, and so we have to go into it just using the data we have. We're using last year's information as well, player-based model. A lot of these players that were impactful, have transferred or been drafted. And so it's not quite the same situation as just saying, well, Georgia's been good, Alabama hasn't played well on the road. It's like, if Georgia had looked like the dominant team we saw a couple of years ago that was winning these non-conference games, 55-3, it's a little bit of a different story, but that's not really who they've been. Real quick, I wanted to loop back just because I was able to look it up here, loop back to Penn State in their whiteout games, because I've heard this narrative and I just want to make sure that we use facts here and not feelings when we're dissecting college football games. The last whiteout game that they played against a top 10 opponent, I'm not going to count the first round of the college football playoff because SMU, that was a different story. They were technically number 10. 2018, they played number 4 Ohio State. They lost. 2016, they did beat number 2 Ohio State. But going back to 2012, they lost to number 9 Ohio State. 2011, they lost to number 3 Alabama. 2006, they lost to number 4 Michigan. 2005, they beat number 6 Ohio State. 2004, they lost to number 9 Purdue. So that's a grand total of 2 wins and 5 losses. So 2 and 5.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that they can't come out and win this game. I'm just saying people talk about the whiteout thing, and I'm like, it doesn't mean anything. All right. They're still going to lose to the good teams most of the time, and they're still going to randomly pull an upset at home because that's how it goes, right? Don't get lost in that narrative. If you don't like our Oregon pick, like it for a real reason and not some feeling that you get the feel goods when you get emotional looking at the crowd, because it looks cool, but it doesn't mean much.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you get to loop back to Penn State. Oh, another thing I have to say here about Alabama and Georgia, you people over on Patreon may say, but Cousin Jared, you have Georgia at number 1 in your top 10 and you don't have Alabama in your top 10. Why are you taking Alabama at plus 130? Well, number one, I would say I'm here to make bucks for you viewers here. I'm not worried about my rankings necessarily. The other thing that I would say is my rankings, maybe I should have prefaced this in my articles, but my rankings are based on what you've done on the field. I thought that Georgia win at Tennessee, getting down early, coming back, sticking with it, I thought that was great. That got them my number one spot. I will say I am looking back with my rankings at how they've done this year. I am not looking forward. So that's the difference between Sidelines rankings and my rankings. I'm definitely not looking forward. And
that's a good point to make, right? That these are forward facing predictive rankings, which is if I built Sideline to simply the resume thing, right? Look just at what you've done on the field this season. And even if I use last season, but just what you've done on the field. And I'm not trying to make a projection, right? But I'm weighting this season's games. Yeah, absolutely. You would have Georgia higher than 9 and you'd have Bama lower than 1. But predictive wise, what we're seeing again, I tell people this I was telling my dad this earlier. I said, sometimes we have to remember that even though our brains want to say, well, here's this data point, we have to say, but is that data point the best predictor? And a lot of times the answer is no. The best predictor is whatever combination of data points that we found. And it's usually not as simple as saying the best predictor is what they've done in their 3 games this season. And the best predictor isn't necessarily, what they did last week, or the best predictor isn't, whatever. It's more complicated. That's why I've built a very complicated model to try to figure out what's the best way to predict going forward. Right. I've taken my stab at it. I think it does a pretty good job. It's not perfect. I don't agree with Bama number 1, but I do agree with Bama plus 130 because, again, plus and Oregon 2 plus. Give me the dogs. One of them wins. Yep. Don't know which one. And maybe we'll get lucky and Alabama will win. And then if Oregon loses, they'll lose by 30. Yeah. And then we get both of them. That'd be the dream scenario. Yeah. Folks, we like to cover the games that the model likes aside in a total. We call them AA games, A grade on the side, A grade on the total. There are 8 of them this week. We're going to cover all 8 of them. A couple of them, we're going to talk about the other pick that we aren't discussing on the show. A couple of them we aren't. We're going to start off Friday night, Florida State at Virginia. We're going to go under 57.5. Cousin Jared, we just talked about Alabama. Nice segue here to Florida State. Overall number 28. Reminder for people, Florida State's played 1 game that was good. Other than that, I'm not buying in based off of, it was impressive. I feel like those were necessary, but not sufficient, right? And so that's where we want to say, if they were a top 10 team last year, and they did that to those little schools, we would say, great, you're doing exactly what you need to do. But the problem is we have to consider last year's data. Now that's fading out every week. But we have to consider last year's data, what these players did at their respective schools too, not just the ones from Florida State. Right. And they still have a lot of work to do to overcome that. They did a great job of that against Bama. They're going to need to do the same thing here on the road against a Virginia team that looks decent. Looks like they got some offensive firepower against Stanford for sure. And if they are as real as it sounds like they might be, then they can go in there and get the job done and have a nice, easy victory. And Sideline's going to continue to move them up. But the model's just saying, hold on for now. So that's the justification for that number 28 is just hold on for now, because we can't just say last year they were 2-10. And after the Bama game, now we're going to put them top 10, even if they might be a top 10 team. We'll find out. So instead, we're going to go with the under. Average game in this case. Model says it says about an average game, right? 52.4. That's right around the average that we're seeing here in this area of college football. One team, a little bit better on offense in Virginia than balance like Florida State, but the pace in this game being a little bit lower kind of balances out. Florida State's put up a lot of points against some of the weaker teams. Virginia's defense at home probably good enough to not give up 70, right? Yeah. And then we just got to see, can we keep this in the 50s, really, is the question, the mid to low 50s. We love 58 or 59. Because, Jared, is this a game that you're telling people no need to rush? The walk, don't run type thing. Maybe we can get a 58, 59. Or are you thinking it's more likely to go down to 55? Just go ahead and lock it in.
Well, first of all, you mentioned those data points with Florida State necessary but not sufficient. Also, what Miss Cousin Jared says when I attempt to help her clean the house, it was necessary for me to help, but not a sufficient job done. So
Well done.
I can
Well
relate
done.
to that. Yeah, definitely no reason to rush out and get this. If you can find a 58, I was able to find a 58. I think you could probably, if you wait a little bit, you might be able to get it. I think people are going to go off what they've seen from the Florida State offense so far, which, by the way, you said not against the best competition. Now, I would say against the almost literal worst competition outside of the Alabama game.
Outside of Bama, yeah.
Yeah, they have played absolutely nobody. And then Virginia, obviously looked great against Stanford last week. So I think this does have the potential to get up to 58. So I would definitely wait for that. We saw the way that Florida State just honestly bullied Alabama around, really won the time of possession in that game. See the same thing happening here. I just don't know how many chances Virginia is going to have because Florida State could keep the ball for, 16 minutes in the first half, 17 minutes in the first half, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is if you're actually watching the game. And, get up by 2 touchdowns, and then Virginia is just kind of having to play from behind, and Florida State just runs the ball the whole second half, which Gus Malzahn would be more than happy to do.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just one of those things. I think there are, a lot more ways this goes under a number like 58 than goes over. You'd have to have a pretty specific type of game, in my opinion, to do that.
And Virginia is going to be thinking all week, how do we prevent the home run ball, right? Because Florida State's had some big touchdown plays. Again, against weaker competition. So they're going to be thinking about, let's not give up, let's not try to give up 6 on every other play, right? That sort of thing. Because that's how this game turns into a track meet. They're going to be defending against that. Folks, I want to make sure that we're not, confusing people because we're not trying to talk out of both sides of our mouth here. But that Stanford, I think we'll talk later about Stanford. That trip across the country, right? We were talking about this on Discord. I think we learned of this last year, but I really can't remember. This last year has been crazy for my personal life here with the little ones. That going back across the country now, we're seeing it more so with the Big Ten as well, having to go out a couple times a year out to the West Coast. We're seeing it now in the ACC. We're seeing it now in the Big 12 a little bit more. It used to be in the Big 12, West Virginia was just a tough road trip. Well, that was because all the other road trips were easy. And West Virginia was hard. And not to say that West Virginia isn't any easier because they still have that weird, flying into a different airport and all that other stuff. That's specific to them. But now you're adding, UCF having to go to Arizona and all this other stuff, right? So these longer trips are just tougher. And Stanford's defense looked like they got left back in Palo Alto. And I guarantee you that Virginia is not going to be able to just slice right through Florida State the way they did Stanford. I don't, that's really the one thing I'm confident in. And so this is an interesting one where, again, the model is trying to be slow to react to Florida State because it doesn't want to overreact, especially, again, because really that one data point, it really reacted strongly to Bama, and it just didn't do quite as much for the other ones. If they are really good and they're going to score a lot of points, I think this game, if it goes over because Florida State, not because of Virginia.
Yeah.
Another angle you could look at would be Virginia team total under would be something else just to consider. I just don't think they're going to have the success that they had against a Stanford team that looked really lost. Saturday, Duke at Syracuse. Big news, of course, was Syracuse, their starting quarterback, who looked really impressive out for the season. Again, player-based model, so we've plugged in the backup. Still gives their offense the 61 rank in college football. Not bad. Obviously, not where it was. Obviously, with with the first stringer in there. Duke, the better team. We're going to pass on the side, and we're going to go with the over 59.5. Model says it's an average of a nice 69 points. Cousin Jared, I think there's a chance that the pace for Syracuse maybe slows down a little bit now with the backup quarterback. The model's not picking up on that because it's not coded to say backup quarterback slow the pace down. Maybe it should. I don't know. But either way, it's like we talk about with these A grades, we have a little bit of wiggle room. So even if that pace is less than this from Syracuse and they don't go quite as fast, they're not quite as explosive, they're still fast enough. Duke still plays fast enough that we would still say the average game probably gets into the mid 60s here. We've got the win on all those key numbers in the low 60s. We often talk about 60, 62 really being probably the most common one there. Cousin Jared, another walk, don't run. Do you think this can get down to 59, which would be key, probably more key than 58? Or is this one you think is going to get bet up and just go ahead and lock it in now because we don't want to have to hassle with it?
I think you could wait a little bit and see what this number does. To me, there's no difference between 59.5 and 60.5. I would rather wait and see if I could get the 59 personally. But let me tell you, I really like this play because Duke kind of sneakily 4-0 towards the over this year. Since Darian Mensah has come in, Duke has really picked up the pace, and their defense has seemingly regressed a little bit. And not only have they gone over in every game, but 3 of those games went over by double digits, and the other one went over by 9 points. So they have just it's really not even been close. All of their games have been going over. So for sure, a little bit of a concern with the Syracuse quarterback situation, but I think ultimately kind of the pace of both these teams and just the way that Duke has decided they're going to play football this year, I think is going to help this game get closer to the mid 60s.
Well said. Also at noon Eastern, South Alabama and North Texas. Because Jared, you mentioned at the top of the show, South Alabama. What in the world?
Yeah.
One of the most confusing teams in the country. The model did not take kindly to that performance and just dropped them all the way down to number 116. They still play fast, though, and you know who else plays fast? North Texas. Those games have been absolutely drunk this year. We've loved every bit of every North Texas over we can get. We're going back to the well again, over 63.5. Your key number there, again, we already talked about it, low 60, 62. But this game feels like it's 65, 68, 69. Probably into the 70s, maybe the 80s. I'm not really sure how crazy this game can get, but it can get pretty crazy. What's your take?
Yep. I mean, I've had to stop. I have to stop myself every single week from putting North Texas overs as what we talk about on the show. It's like I have to limit myself to every other week because we just kind of say the same thing about them over and over again. They were up by 2 weeks ago against Washington State. They were up by 45 points, and they were still snapping the ball with 20 seconds left on the play clock. I mean, it is just in their DNA. It's what they do. And similar to Duke, nobody's really. I don't even want to say that. It's just they are able to play the type of game they want to play. They're able to make the other team play the way they want to. Freaking took Army to 83 points, and this Army team's not last year's Army team. Got that game to 83 points. Maybe you could say they're not quite as good as Duke because they had one game where they did go under, but that wasn't on them. They scored 51 and Lamar scored 0. So that's on Lamar. That was not.
It doesn't even count. It's an FCS game.
Yeah, it's FCS school. So, but still, I mean, for all they did go under in that game. But yeah, just the North Texas overs until they are setting the totals in the mid 60s, over 65. It's almost just like a blind back at this point, just because North Texas loves to get crazy.
Because Jared, for our supporters over on Patreon and the Honor Roll, they've got all these projections, all this stuff, more data than they probably know what to do with. The first 2 AA games we covered, I think there are really strong reasons to pass on the A grade that we did not cover, and I think you could probably, if you've got that, you can probably figure out why. This one is one where I think North Texas is favored by 12. The model thinks they win by even more. What is your hesitancy with laying the points with North Texas? Why do you think the over is a better play? Is it just because the overs have been so good, or part of my fear is I think about that Washington State game, and I think if they run away with it, they could easily cover this game. But is it one of those where even in that game we saw it go over? So you say it kind of doesn't matter how the game plays out, the over still is the safer play. Where's your head at when looking at both? What I think make a lot of sense, both side and total.
I think it's mostly because I've been bitten one too many times by taking North Texas on this, laying points with North Texas, and it's not necessarily this season. Although there was one, they played one of the directional Michigans. They didn't cover in that game. I actually have that pulled up. I could just look at that right now. Western Michigan, they won that one 33-30 in overtime. But I think
like directional Michigan better though. That way it's just ambiguous as to which one of the three it is.
I think we laid 9 points in that game with Western Michigan and didn't cover. North Texas actually trailed the majority of that game. Multiple times last season, we had a very similar thing. You're like, North Texas is just so good offensively, going up against these teams that have no obvious strength. They'll just be able to outscore them, and they just don't don't seem to do it. They don't seem to do it more than 52% of the time. Is what I would say. So, and to your point, the totals have just been, almost. The totals have been much more reliable than laying the points with North Texas. Now, if I'm going to take North Texas as a dog, sure, sign me up. When we can take North Texas as a dog, love to, but I'm not going to lay points with them.
Yeah, it's almost a shame they're not in a better, have a tougher schedule, have better conference, whatever you want to say there with it, because the model's really high on them. And so if they could be situations where we could take plus odds on them as a dog and just say they're going to score a lot, who the heck knows what's going to happen. But if they're playing a weaker schedule like this, it's laying a bunch of points is a little bit scarier. I think that Army game, I'm not sure they covered that one either. Yeah, but I mean, the model really likes what they do. But like you said, they have the ability that they didn't against Washington State, but they have the ability to give up a lot of points to teams that otherwise shouldn't be scoring a lot of points, which points back to the over.
Well, if so, playing South Alabama this week, they're on bye the following week. October 10th, they are playing South Florida, hosting South Florida. That could be an opportunity to take points with North Texas. And then on November 15th, they are playing at UAB. What's the total going to be in a UAB game?
Like, I'm going to say 83.
You know what? That I might still go over.
That's why I said it at 83, because I feel like if it's at 83, like, people are going to be like, I should go. Like, there'll be people who would take the under, but there'll be people who'd be like, no, we should still go over that one. It feels like some of those old Big 12 games back, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever it was, where some of those totals were up into the mid 70s. It was like, so go over. It seems to have like 90 points in it. Sure enough, they always have, an insane number. Moving on to the 3:30 p.m. Eastern AA game slot. We've got 3 of them in this one. Utah at West Virginia. We're going to lay the 10 with the Utes, coming off of a very concerning performance at home. Cousin Jared, I'm going to state my opinion. You can disagree with me or not. I came away from that more impressed with Tech than I did discouraged by Utah. I will say the model did ding that Utah offense a little bit, has dropped him down to number 36. I also think that having a 10 a.m. local kick was not useful for Utah. Early in the season last year, they played a Baylor team that was in absolute disarray and ended up only beating them, I think, by 14 in a game that they should have won by 30. 10 a.m. kicks are not great for anybody, any of the fans, anything like that. And so I'm going to say that was a little bit rough start time, and a little bit Tech is really good. They were the preseason favorite in the Big 12, according to Sideline. And so I'm not really too discouraged by that. Now, Utah, though, does have the tough task of traveling across the country. Really tough spot, Cousin Jared. The only thing I'm going to make sure we say it on air here is, if you want to wait and live bet this one because you're expecting a slow start from Utah, not the craziest thing in the world. I'd feel more strongly about that if it was a noon Eastern kick, though, than 3:30 p.m. Eastern, because even though last week's they were at home, they were kicking off at 10 o'clock local time. This one at least is 12:30 body clock time. And so, or even 1:30, I guess, body clock time. So at least the body clock will be doing a little bit better for the Utes. What's your take?
Aside from the one game against Pitt that, and I wrote about it afterwards, like it was this revenge game that everything had been building up to since Rich Rod has come back. In the 2 other FBS games that West Virginia have played, they have just been completely outclassed, losing at Ohio. And they only lost by 7, but I don't even know if that game was ever tied.
They didn't feel. I remember watching the game because we had West Virginia again, man. And I felt the entire second half, it felt hopeless. Like they couldn't get out of their own side of the field. It seemed like it was just like they get the ball, punt. They get the ball, punt. I mean, it just felt, which is not how you want to feel against Ohio. No shade to Ohio, but you're hoping for better than that if you're West Virginia.
And then last week at Kansas, lost by 31, never in that game. I say all that to say, West Virginia's got some work to do. But Utah is, in my opinion, Utah because maybe more so than any other team in the country, Utah is going to look terrible one week, and they're going to come back and they're going to just grind you down and make you look dumb the following week. To your point, you thought that was more about Tech. Anybody who comes out and doubts Utah, I think Utah's going to come out to prove a point in this game, and they are very well coached. And I think they're going to bounce back up this week. And next week, everybody's going to say, you know what? Yeah, that Tech win does look really good. More on Tech than on Utah. So I also just don't think this defense for West Virginia is going to have anything for our boy Dampier. Tech's defense, surprisingly, especially after last week, I think made a jump up. West Virginia's defense has yet to make that jump.
They are still allowing points to Kansas, I feel like. Unfortunately, they didn't score enough for us to get over. We missed that over by like a field goal, I think.
Yeah.
Because West Virginia just couldn't do anything offensively, which is why the model has their offense almost out of the top 100, which is not great when there's only 136 schools. Yeah. On top of that, we have to remember, folks, West Virginia fired their head coach last year for a reason. They're not like it, you don't expect. I'm not saying that Rich Rod can't do a great job there. I think it was a solid hire. I think it was one of the rare homecoming things that made sense. But to expect them to have them figured out here by week 5 of the first season is a little bit much. A lot of time, where did the concept of having a year 0 go? Right. Yeah. Especially, and forget that a year 1, right? Where at this point, he's still obviously in year 1. And so West Virginia might look a whole lot better next year. But early on, I think we've seen the struggles that we would think we would expect in a situation with a new coach that wasn't because of, promotion and good things like that, but because of the fact that they underperformed. And so, a little bit tough to go into Morgantown, a little bit, tough to back a team traveling across the country, totally get that. And if Utah shows up in this game, Morgantown has lost a little bit of its mystique as West Virginia has struggled. They've had some big losses there. This could be another one of those. We're going to lay the 10 with the Utes. Yukon and Buffalo, we're going to lay the 3 with Yukon. Model says they win by an average of 8. Cousin Jared, Buffalo lost to Troy last week.
Sans their starting quarterback.
Sans their starting quarterback in a game that they had a 17-0 lead, I believe, in the fourth quarter. They needed a last-second comeback to beat Kent State. Yukon, I know, has been a little up and down so far this year, but I just get bad vibes about Buffalo this season. It really is all there is to it for me. So I'm going to lay the field goal with the Huskies. What's your take?
And we've experienced this here. Yukon, a team that can win games, but a team you do not want to lay large numbers with. So I'm good with laying 3. 3 is probably the limit, though. I don't know if I would lay 3.5 with Yukon. They are one of those teams that I play to the level of their competition. And, they are just, even if they have a lot more talent and are, well coached, it just seems like they're going to find a way to make it a 1-score game every game. So yeah, I'm good with laying 3. Not sure if I'd lay 3.5.
Couple of notes here. Talk about playing to the level of competition. My goodness, Yukon last week beat Ball State, who's terrible, only by 6 at home. The week before, they let Delaware beat them in overtime. The week before, though, they lost at Syracuse in overtime. But you go back to last year, and it was the same story. They lost by 7 at Syracuse. They won at a terrible UMass team, only by 5. But they went on the road and beat UAB by 8. They beat Georgia State by 7. They beat Rice by 7. They lost to Wake by 3. They only beat a terrible Temple team by 9. Yeah. Except, well, no, they only lost to Duke by 5. Except last year they played Buffalo and they beat them 47-3. I don't know what to make of that. I will say this is not like the Vanderbilt situation where you said last week, where you talked about Vanderbilt losing to Georgia State, coming out pissed off, because that's a situation where we loved laying the big number with Vandy as much as you and I hate laying big numbers, because we said Vandy is that much better. They can just get that revenge. Yeah. I'm not sure this Buffalo team is good enough to get any form of revenge whatsoever. Sure. And so if this Buffalo team was better, I'd be like, oh, watch out. Like, they might come out to prove a point. They need to prove the point that they can win a football game first. And I haven't seen that. So model says they win by about a touchdown. We'll lay the 3. I'm with you. I don't want to lay more than 3. And if this gets to 3.5, 4, it feels like it's probably not even worth it to play the money line because the odds will be so high. So this is a lay 3, lay 2.5. Don't want to lay more because UConn just plays these close games and you have no idea which side it's going to land on. But against Buffalo, something just in my gut tells me, let's take the Huskies. New Mexico State at UNM. Folks, this is why we love our community over on Discord. One of our patrons over there texting out this afternoon after we gave out the total in this one as an A grade play as well, saying, hey, y'all, the total got a half a point better. Run, don't walk. And so we're like, yes, love it. Share those with us. Great community over there on Discord. So we've already got that A grade on the total. Everyone over there on Patreon's already looking to cash that one. We're also going to try to cash the side. UNM minus 14 in a rivalry game here that has sometimes been close and scary. And sometimes one team likes to really beat the crap out of the other one. Usually that's New Mexico beating the crap out of New Mexico
Yeah.
State. That's what it looks like here. The model says they might average of 3 touchdowns. We only have to lay 2 because you're right. Is it that simple?
Yep, it's that simple. Don't know his name, but the coach at New Mexico came from Idaho, turned Idaho around, went on the road
Made
with New
that
Mexico.
incredible video
Yes,
about with the
yes.
kids getting the free
Eating
tickets.
Scotch tots. Yeah, they retweeted me. I think this is really all this has been building to. They liked my tweet or something when I made a comment about it. So yeah, of course, love New Mexico, love the 14.
Yeah, I love them. Yeah.
But the other thing, it's to your point, being a rivalry game. First year coach at New Mexico, think he wants to make a point. They had the bye after UCLA, so it's not necessarily as much of a letdown spot. Yeah, I think this is one of those things like New Mexico just has everything going in their favor. And as much as New Mexico State had that one year with Jerry Kill and our boy Diego Pavia, we're on the downside of that now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, New Mexico State actually won those two meetings that they had with Pavia. But that was all that they've won recently. They lost last year. And then, of course, before that, New Mexico had won 3 straight. So New Mexico State's come through and won a few. But when you go back through, especially the games that have been played in Albuquerque, a couple of them have gotten really lopsided. One of them actually stayed close, but New Mexico put up a 55. Wouldn't have covered a big number, put up 55, which I thought was crazy. You go back to say 2013, New Mexico won 66-17. There's been some situations like that where this rivalry where, both teams are going to score some points, but, New Mexico just way too much firepower relative to that New Mexico State defense and kind of just named their number. And so that gives you a little bit of confidence. This is one where I'm not sure I would love laying a number like 21 because this feels like a game that could land right around that number or in that 17 number. Or even if we talk about backdoor possibilities, that's, again, one of the reasons we love the A grades. If it's 21 late, we get that backdoor situation, lands at 14, we got the push. So again, always a good reason to be thinking about your key numbers. 14, even though it's not near where the model says, that key number part makes this even more exciting. So an A grade there. 2 night games to wrap up our AA segment. Stanford hosting San Jose State. Because, Jared, after what we saw from Stanford last week, how does anybody back them? That's really the question.
I'm glad you asked, because San Jose State has been one of the worst teams relative to the spread this year. They've only played 3 games, but they failed to cover by more than 2 touchdowns against Central Michigan. They failed to cover by more than 2 touchdowns, almost 2 touchdowns against Idaho last week. The only game that they have covered this year, ironically, was against Texas, but we're kind of
Arch Manning.
Yeah, we're kind of aware of everything that's been going on with Texas. That was week 2, Texas coming off Ohio State.
Literally no desire to play fast whatsoever.
Yeah.
I think they were cruising to a cover probably and then like the third quarter and fourth quarter, they just were like, we'll just hand the ball off 3 times and punt. We don't care.
Yeah. They just needed one more touchdown. They would have covered that one. So against I would say this, San Jose State has not come close to covering against every team that was really trying against them this season. I think Stanford will be trying, just based on, the geography here of these 2 teams, and Stanford knowing that they just don't have too many opportunities for wins this year.
It does feel like if, Stanford, I don't know if I haven't looked at their schedule enough to know is a bowl game possible. I think that loss at Hawaii might be the one that really dooms them at the start, that they blow that one.
Next 3 games in the ACC for Stanford, which again, is so stupid to say, but at SMU, home to Florida State, at Miami, and then they do have Pitt, North Carolina, Cal, and finish the season with Notre Dame. So yeah, Stanford needs to win this one.
Any chance for a bowl game, they got to win this one.
Yeah.
I kind of think any chance for a bowl game, they probably would have had to win the Hawaii game. But yeah, either way, they're going to be coming out playing hard. It's early in the season.
Yep.
There's no mailing this one in at this point.
Yep.
I think at this point, I'm comfortable laying the 2.5 with Stanford. I love that it's 2.5, not 3 or 3.5. The model's really taken note of San Jose State and saying they're really not that good and they're not even that good relative to the expectations. And so we have to continue to ding them even more. But on top of that, I think you've got a Stanford team that I think really struggle with that cross country road trip. They've got a couple more of those to make, so hopefully they can figure it out. But that's not an issue this week, right? And so that's really all that matters for this one is that they are back home. They looked a whole lot better against a Boston College team that I know is way better than San Jose State, and that game at least felt like it should have been a pretty coin tosses type game. And so again, if we go back to that, should be a coin tosses type game. Boston College was hampered by that long road trip, then playing a much inferior San Jose State team. They should be able to win, by 7-10, something like that. And so we're going to lay the 2.5. I think I hope they can bounce back again. You're never as good as you look at your best, and you're never as bad as you look at your worst. That's the hope for us with Stanford, that last week was just the bad, and they're actually just a lot better than that. But again, hopefully they just left the defense of Palo Alto. Now they're back home. They can find it.
Yeah.
Last one in this segment here, Marshall at Louisiana. Marshall was good to us last week on a fairly easy victory, rain delayed in the middle of it, against Middle Tennessee State. We're going to take them at Louisiana here. They win 62% of the time according to the model. Plus 105 is an A grade. Anything around even money makes way too much sense to pass up. What's the reasoning behind that? Where Marshall lost everybody last year. Where are you seeing, wait a minute, Marshall's still the better team here?
I have not been impressed with Louisiana this season. I thought that Walker Howard, when we were talking earlier in the season about how, some quarterbacks have played a bunch of places and haven't stuck, with Walker Howard, it was like, well, he went to LSU and didn't get to play, which that makes sense. He went to Ole Miss, didn't get to play. That makes sense. Now he's at Louisiana. He's going to get to play here, and it hasn't really made any difference at all. I had higher hopes for him. They lost to Rice coming out at the beginning of the season, which is, looking at where these teams have been the past few seasons. I mean, Louisiana just a couple seasons ago were, in the hunt for being in the Sun Belt Championship game every single season, and they've just really come down off of that. So for me, it's not even really about Marshall necessarily. This is more for me about Louisiana not looking good, and if I can get plus odds to fade them, I'm probably going to do that, unless it's against one of the really, really bad teams, which Marshall is not.
I think you had the Rice season wins over. I believe
we're 3.5. Yeah,
3.5. They've already got 3.
Yeah,
little shout out there. Nice job on you. Where they're one win away from cashing a season wins bet here in September. Pretty nice. Yeah, Marshall, as he got the job done for us last week against on the road against a really bad Middle Tennessee State team. Here against a maybe slightly better Louisiana team, but not by much. And so we're just going to, like you said, not about Marshall, just trust that they're good enough, and more about, I think last week, one of the reasons to fade Middle Tennessee was they aren't very good. And it's kind of the same thing here. Well, Louisiana, not very good.
Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes it is that simple. Folks, we always remind people, you don't have to watch the games to make money in a segment we like to call it. You don't got to watch them to make the monies. This game would qualify as one of those. I hear, by the way, Marshall, Louisiana. Also, several more to qualify. San Diego State at Northern Illinois. My goodness, this game is going to be dreadful for the eyeballs. We're going to go under 43.5, a fairly low college total. When we've taken these under low numbers, though, we tend to do really well because we tend to take them when the model says it should be in the 30s, and the market is just like, no, we can't go that low.
Yeah,
and yet it's like, you
low.
should go that low. And yet people are afraid to do it. Because, Jordan, why do you think that is? Why do you think that the high totals that people love to go over aren't quite as successful, but the low totals that people hate to go under typically are? Is it just because everyone hates to root for unders and they're scary? Because I love these good the low unders, because you just root for boring and it usually prevails.
Yeah, I think it's probably, when you have such a low total, it really only takes one or 1.5 small things to go wrong, and you're kind of screwed. So I think that's what it is, especially those that have been around it long enough. It's just kind of like, man, all it's going to take is one little thing here, and I'm done for. But the good thing is San Diego State and Northern Illinois, a team that you're not necessarily expecting fireworks from, is what I would say. Like, for example, with Iowa, if you're going to play an Iowa over or under, you're like, well, there's going to be a special teams touchdown, and there's going to be a safety, and all of these weird things. But not the case with San Diego State. You go back and look at that box score of that San Diego State game where they won against Cal 34-0. Like, yes, Cal lost the turnover battle pretty badly, but San Diego State did not do anything particularly amazing in that game. Cal just shot themselves in the foot. So if people are looking at San Diego State scoring 34 points against Cal last week, don't worry about it. It's not that big a deal.
I was going to say, too, this is why we have the model to point out to us. These offenses aren't good, and the defenses aren't good either. This is bad football, folks, plain and simple. But the defenses are better than the offenses. And San Diego State, not going to have an easy time scoring on the road. Northern Illinois, not going to have an easy time scoring against a defense with a pulse. And you look at the pace, neither one of these teams is pushing it at all. And so, I mean, this is going to be Big Ten football, I think. And even though it's not a Big Ten game, and we love a good under in Big Ten football. Cousin Jared, you mentioned Iowa, but Iowa, again, I think I mentioned last week, I'd be afraid to go under that Iowa Rutgers game. Iowa's played a couple overs this season, so we might have to come up with a new, we might should shift to Minnesota, to be honest. I don't
Yeah, maybe. Good point. Good point.
Something to keep in mind. UCLA at Northwestern, folks, a Big Ten game, still weird. A game that I think a lot of people are going to be interested in as a Big Ten game and, you know, cool, but my goodness, another game that I want no part in watching. We're going to take the 7 with UCLA. Cousin Jared, I almost decided to have a special segment this week called the Dead Cat Bounce, which is all I'm counting on from UCLA here is things can't get worse and things get better when you fire your coach. Not because of anything often other than players have someone new in there and they were unlucky before and they, you know, probably not as bad as they looked. And, you know, then the luck starts to turn or the players are a little bit happier or whatever. Who cares? Anything, any number of things can change when you fire a coach. And as long as UCLA has anything go positive for them, they can hang in there, ugly this game up, and it's a 1-score game and we win or push, right?
Right. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. For me, this is also mostly like, I don't know how you could, if you've watched any UCLA this year, their offense has been terrible. I mean, just absolutely terrible. Somehow Northwestern's is worse. So it would not shock me at all for UCLA to lose this game. Of course, like they're 7-point underdog. Like I'm not breaking any news there.
Model says they lose whatever 60% of the time.
Northwestern is almost incapable of blowing anybody out, winning by more than one score, I guess. So for me, I do expect a little bit of a bounce from UCLA here. I mean, it would be very difficult to get worse. Yeah. But for me, this is mostly about Northwestern just being completely inept offensively.
Because Jared, I love uncomfortable plays. I kind of mentioned it earlier. I love fading a team who has looked good, and we have reason to think they aren't that good. And I love backing a team that's looked bad, and we have reason to think they're not that bad. But you simply get a little bit of extra value because, you know, that 1 or 2 points adds up in the long run. It might not matter in this game. UCLA might be truly dreadful, might go 0 and whatever, and might lose this game by double digits. But in the long run, by getting that extra point or two of value in a situation like this, again, before we have more data on it, then, you know, if UCLA loses game by 7, we push. If it lose by 6, we win. If it lose by 3, right, 4, right? There's a lot of ways that those extra couple of points of value are going to matter here. And in the long run, again, that's the sort of stuff that adds up. If it's an uncomfortable play and people hate making it, sign me up for it because that means, again, we're probably getting a little bit of extra value, and that's how we make money. Is taking every bit of value that we can. Rice at Navy under 46, a B grade for us here as the model projects 44. Because you're to explain for the people why we like this one, even though that edge we talk about, we like those big edges, those A grade, those big differentials. Not a big one here, but yet we still like it. Explain for the people why.
I like it because I don't know how many passes there are going to be in this game. I say that like Rice, they'll throw the ball around a little bit, but the improvement that Rice has shown this year, and it's been a little bit surprising to me, has been because their defense has played better, not because
top 100.
Not because their offense has played well, which I thought their offense,
10.
Which
bottom 10 in the offense.
Which I thought their offense would play a little bit better. So if Rice stays in this game, I think it's because it's a low scoring game. If Rice gets down by 2 scores in this game, you're going to see Navy do what it does when it gets up by 2 scores, and it's just going to be 3 yards, 3 yards, 3 yards, 4th and 1, 3 yards. And they're going to have a 12, 13, 14-minute drive in this game at some point. So this is just one of those things where I think no matter how you game it out, you're more likely to get an under, winner here than an over. And of course, as always, I just want to make sure to grab this before it gets to 45, not only because the key number, but also because it's just below 45, it's just lost even more of its value.
Watching Rice, we got an over win with Rice this last week. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Watching this Rice team play this last week, their style of offense, it's very similar to Navy, like you kind of mentioned, in that if they're playing a defense that's any good at all, and the Navy defense grades out as average, it's going to be if Rice has success, it's almost assuredly not going to be the home run ball. That's not really what they're trying for. It's going to be 3 yards, 3 yards, 3 yards, that sort of thing. So even if Rice moves the ball, it's going to take a long time. I don't know how many field goals are going to happen with these offenses, especially with Navy, right? Given that they excel in those short yardage situations. But man, all we need is like a couple of 10-minute field goal drives and we are set, or a couple of 10-minute, fourth down and goal stops, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to be set, because I just don't see either one of these teams. It's not just it's not that they're not hurrying, because they're not, right? But it's specifically that they just don't have the explosives in them for the most part. It's going to just be a lot of 2-yard plays, a lot of 4-yard plays, and that's one of the ways you get an under. So you get under 46 here. Only a B grade, but one we think has value. Last one here. There are more games than this you don't have to watch, but we've given you 4 picks here in the afternoon slot that there's better things to be watching, especially than Hawaii at Air Force. Because, Jared, we already talked about Hawaii at the top of the show. We talked about Air Force a little bit and their struggles. We're going to go under 54 as an A grade. We'd love 55. But the model saying 47 tells us that the key number we should be worried about, probably less so 55 and more 47, 48, or even 51, 52. We get the win on all of those. Because, Jared, we talk a lot about Hawaii's offense doesn't really travel to the mainland very well. Air Force, not a great defense, but thankfully playing a Hawaii offense that also not very good even before you consider the travel. This Hawaii team's been playing in some low-scoring games this year. These unders have been money for Hawaii. Why stop now?
Yep. And if anybody read my recap from this past weekend, you might be asking, why are we playing an under in an Air Force game? Because, Cousin Jared, I thought you literally wrote that Air Force might have an absolutely atrocious defense. Yes, thank you. I am glad to see that my eyes are not deceiving me, that Air Force does have an atrocious defense. Hawaii's offense, not sure they can do anything about it. And to your point, traveling there to the mainland, this just seems to me like, honestly, I don't even, what is I sideline project the spread in this game to be? I assume Air Force is favored slightly.
I would say probably by about a field goal if I just had to guess. Yeah.
Okay. So I think Air Force gets up in this one and then just can't. They may take a 10-minute drive and not score any points. I just don't know how often Hawaii's quarterback is going to have his hand on the ball in this one. And yeah, as bad as, Air Force's defense is, Hawaii's offense is just as bad, and the travel. I can't believe that we're getting to go under 54. I thought if I were setting this line, I would have said 50.5 and make you choose. Does it get into the mid 50s? Does it get into the 50s basically, or does it stay in the 40s? Can't believe they put it up at 54.
Southern British 6.8 for the spread on this one, and the spread I think is 6.5. So one that we think is priced pretty well. I said 3, and then I kind of forgot that obviously the travel for Hawaii is going to be a big, a bigger swing on the home field advantage because of that. So. And I think we talked about Air Force. The Boise game's a little bit curious because we still don't quite know what to make of Boise. But watching that Utah State game, it's like, Air Force scored a bunch of points and gave up a bunch of points. That was Utah State. Run, don't walk. A segment of games here highlighting good numbers. We've already talked about a lot of key numbers and a lot of good numbers. So, of course, this isn't the only one for these. These are just ones that we want to make sure we highlight the value of the number. We got both Friday night games here involving Big 12 teams. This one a Big 12 conference game, TCU at Arizona State. Jared, I like this one for a few reasons. Number one, Arizona State getting the win at Baylor, I think, was a good win for them. I'm not sure exactly how good this Baylor team is, but I think going on the road to one of the many solid teams in the Big 12 and getting to win is impressive, is good, is a great win to hang their hat on coming off of the Mississippi State fiasco. TCU, just a great win over SMU in a rivalry game. The rivalry game aspect of that, the fact that's the last time they're playing for the Iron Skillet for the foreseeable future. Now we've got a short week. Now they've got to go on the road. I just think this should be Arizona State by 3, 3, and even 3 I'd lay, but 3, 2.5 is too low. 3.5 to 4 is probably where it should be. I don't know if the number gets there. We never know exactly where the number's going to go, but to me, the short week travel coming off the rivalry win, like I know they're going to be focused in the conference game. I'm not saying they're not, but Arizona State's a good team, and they reminded us of that last week. They talked about how they like being the hunter, not the hunted. Well, now they're the hunter again.
Yeah.
Great spot for them to show they're more than just Cam Scadaboo and that they've got the rest of this offense figured out.
Feels like this, I'm applying my NFL logic here. This feels like two evenly matched teams. Home field advantage should be about 3 points. If I can get the home team at less than 3, seems like a good play. I'm like you, I was impressed with Arizona State, able to do to Baylor what nobody else has been able to do to Baylor this year, and that slow down on their offense. TCU's look good, but to your point, could be, I know they're the ones that say they don't want to keep playing that game, but I think there's still going to be a little bit of a come down off of that the last time they've played that rivalry game there. So
a sigh of relief. We didn't want to keep playing because we didn't want to deal with y'all. Thank God we got the win in the last one.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, I'm good with laying the 2.5. Like I said, this seems like it should be a 3-point spread, though. If it gets to 3, I'm kind of like, once I can get it like -3, like even money or something. But other than that, I like it a lot more, 2.5.
Yeah. Also Friday night, Houston at Oregon State. Cousin Jared, I think we said at the start that Houston might be a team that starts off slow. They might have some ups and downs, but we expected them to figure things out and get scarier as the season's gone along. What we've already seen from them, they already look kind of scary now. I mean, this is scary for the fact that they're one of the teams that we thought would be in the bottom quarter of the Big 12. Kind of frisky. And again, I think we thought that would happen. I just don't think we thought it would happen so fast. A kind of frisky team here, a team that might actually be part of that middle pack of the Big 12, should destroy a team like Oregon State that just looks lost is really all there is to it, in my opinion. Only a B grade, but 12.5. The fact that we're on the right side of 13 kind of blows my mind here. The model says 16. Folks, I would put this at 14.5, 16.5, 17.5, whatever, but at least 14.5 and dare people to take the road team with more than 2 touchdowns, because to me, the discrepancy between these two teams, what we've seen from them, makes you just want to take Houston here. So I'd be making this number uncomfortable for people to take. They made it comfortable for me to take. I don't understand why, but I'm very comfortable taking Houston with this few points. What's your take?
Yeah, so I agree with your assessment there as far as the number. I would have put this at least 2 touchdowns, probably, and then, maybe even 14.5 and kind of make you choose there. You kind of talked about Oregon State. They look terrible. On the Houston side, they look good in that win against Colorado. The defense is about what you would expect from a Willie Fritz team. It has definitely shown improvement. It was even improving last year and has kind of continued to do that. For me, this is more about the Houston offense, and I've watched a lot of Connor Wegman over the years. He actually went to the local high school here, and so watched him there, went to A&M, and there was just something when he was at A&M, maybe it was Jimbo Fisher, that just made things uncomfortable. I'm wondering how much, we knew he was hurt last year. He missed games last year. I'm wondering how hurt he really was. But one thing that Houston's done with him is he's not Tim Tebow. I'm not saying that, but he's a big guy, but he's more like he is a rich man's DJU who can run between the tackles, but he can throw the ball better than DJ could. So when I saw Houston running him more, I was like, okay, this is what he did all throughout high school when he was looking really good, became the 5-star recruit and everything. I just think it kind of helps him get in a rhythm, and he's a big guy. He can take some of the hits. So for me, this is Oregon State being bad. This is Houston's defense being what we expected. And I think Houston using Wegman at quarterback in a way that's a little different than what he's been used before. And I think that's playing to his strengths.
Great quotes from you so far, because I enjoyed this episode. Number one, earlier, I meant to say that when you said Utah is Utah, I feel like we should get shirts made that say that for our fans over in Mormon country. Also, though, I'm pretty sure what I heard, quote, Cousin Jared, that Connor Wegman is the next Tim Tebow. So make sure we get that in big bold letters everywhere.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though. That first year that Wegman was playing for A&M, he had a couple of games early on where he looked like
Yeah, he looked
legit the
good.
real deal. And
Yep.
then the little injury, little whatever, the wheels fell off, and then it just never quite clicked again. But it felt like he had that potential playing in the SEC. And so when he went to Houston, I think you and I both were kind of like, if he can stay healthy and if he can kind of figure it out, like he might be one of the better quarterbacks in this conference because he's played against some really good competition and had moments where he's looked really good.
Yep. All the potential's there with him. So there have been, anybody could say this about the players that have transferred away from their school, but there's some guys that transfer away and you're like, hey, like just wasn't going to work out here. Or there's some guys like, hate to say this, but like, okay, he's your problem. He's your problem now. Glad to be rid of it. Him transferring, it never felt like that. It was like, he's probably going to do well wherever he goes. So yeah, I'm not surprised by him playing well. I'm surprised by how they're using him, and I think it's been good.
Great head coach there, Willie Fritz, one we've talked about for years now.
Yeah.
That's why we said we thought that Houston would improve and would be a team that might be a little bit scary. We didn't know if it would happen right off the bat, but I mean, they've figured out how to use him early on and given me a lot of confidence in this Houston team, putting them again, kind of in that they can win a bunch of Big 12 games, and not in that bottom tier. Really, I think in the bottom tier, we're thinking West Virginia, Oklahoma State, really the two teams that might be the punching bags, but Houston was a little bit of that last year, and it's they've made the jump. They're not that punching bag status anymore. They should be able to beat up on a punching bag, and that's what Oregon State has sadly become.
Yeah.
Utah State at Vanderbilt, Cousin Jared. We might just have to have a weekly running segment. I mean, to our boy Diego Pavia, in Vanderbilt, we love him. I don't really know what else there's to say.
Yep. And Utah State's defense is bad. I can't believe that it's number 77. That is much higher than I would have thought that it would be. But as we
Model's
saw,
giving a lot of that to the pace, number one in the country, and just saying they're going to give up a lot of points because they play so fast. The way against Vanderbilt, they're going to give up a lot of points.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we saw what happened to Georgia State last week, a team that I would say similar, maybe a little bit worse than what Utah State is, but 70-21 or whatever it was. We had plenty of wiggle room there. To me, this is all about like how long is Vanderbilt keeping their starters in. I think that's how this one loses.
I think next week is Alabama, if I'm not mistaken.
So there's a risk there for sure. But with the way that Vanderbilt's played some of these games this season, it's almost like the coaching staff is, I don't know what they're trying to do. Like, I don't know if they're trying to rub it in or just like build everybody's confidence. But even late in these games, like it's not like Vanderbilt's laying down, even when some of the backups are in. So you can't count on that, obviously. But yeah, it's just like Vanderbilt's been on a roll. Just like if Sideline would have said 28. Sorry, if the line was 28 and Sideline said 28.8, I would have still laid the 28. I think at this point with Vanderbilt. So yeah, the fact that it's only 22.5, I think it's great. And like you said, go get this before it gets to 23. Just because 23, 24, you don't want to get mess around with those numbers. And this, I would not be shocked if this line closed at 24.5 as opposed to 22.5.
I would be too. I think you're going to have some people who are afraid to play Vanderbilt because of the Bama game next week and because of the fact that this is an earlier kick, maybe sleepy start, that sort of thing. I don't see anybody who's going to be excited to play Utah State. So I don't see any resistance for the number moving up. I could be wrong, but I just would be surprised if as people start betting Vanderbilt, I think you're going to have people who are like, I'm going to pass from playing Vanderbilt, but I don't know anybody who's going to be like, oh, well, if it gets to 23.5, I'm taking Utah State. They're going to still be like, no, I'm just staying away from it. Cousin Jared, is that an angle potentially for you? Worried potentially about a slow start here at all being earlier, thinking about live betting, or are you more worried about the late finish because of Bama next week employing the starters? Which one gives you more pause?
The latter, the later.
So there you have it. So not a live bet. We think just go ahead and get it in early, and we expect Vanderbilt to kick butt. They feel a little Indiana from 2024 last year from Indiana. A little bit of that feeling to me. Where I think they're going out, kicking tail, running up the score, not necessarily in an unethical way, but just destroying teams.
Yep.
And we were riding Indiana on those last year and backed them almost every game. And, lost a few, but we won way more than we lost. And
Yeah,
so that's kind of how
that's a
Vandy
good
feels.
comparison.
One more in the run, don't walk. Tennessee at Mississippi State over 62. Only a B grade here. Model says the average game more in the mid 60s because you're a key number here, 62, maybe even 63. Even though we talk about numbers divisible by 7 are often key numbers, can be in this situation as you get higher up because the only way to get higher up points is typically by having more touchdowns. So the win on 63, not irrelevant, even though it's not the key number. The push on 62 is the key part that we're wanting to lock in here. Model thinks this gets in the mid 60s, maybe even upper 60s. Because we talked about Tennessee, we talked about their defense, how strong their defense was. Then that Georgia game happened, and it went, are we back to the old run and gun Tennessee team?
Yeah.
What's going on here? Mississippi State played that lower scoring game with Arizona State, but then I go, wait, but Arizona State played a lower scoring game with Baylor, and that was about Arizona State, maybe not about Baylor, because maybe that wasn't about Mississippi State. So when I'm coming at it from that angle, I'm like, Mississippi State can play in a high scoring game. We've seen Tennessee do it, so maybe things get a little fun down there in Stark Vegas.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I just want to play the over in this game. It feels right with these two coaches, with Levy and Heupel. I just feel like somebody's going to score fast and the other guy's going to be like, hey, I can score faster.
Which is kind of what happened in that Tennessee-Georgia game at the start when it was just haymakers left and right. And it was like, whoa.
Yeah. And so I don't have a real good reason. Just this feels right with these two teams and two coaches that like are just so ingrained in them to want to spread it out and go fast and four verts and everything else. It's just like, I don't know. It just feels right.
I'm gonna botch this here, but we're to the hour and a half mark, and so a little side educational segment. I was listening to a podcast today that talked about the science behind trusting your gut, and it talked about the memories that we have, experiences that we have in our life. We can't always remember them all. They can't always stay front of mind. And so what happens is it gets pushed down your back of your brain or whatever. We don't remember them because we can't remember everything, but it's in our brains actually because those were experiences. And I've seen other research from a different perspective that kind of talked about the idea that trusting your gut in an area where you have expertise makes a lot of sense for similar reasons, because you can't maybe necessarily put a finger on it right away, but you have enough experience there. I'm thinking about this, and when you say that, I'm not saying, listener, I'm not saying always trust your gut if bet feels one way or the other, because you got to track these things, right? And if your gut is telling you the same thing over and over, always bet overs, that's not your gut. That's just you like to play overs, right? But when you have these things like this and you can identify and say, this isn't my tendency, but something's telling me this. It's wise to listen. Again, doesn't mean it's always going to hit, but there's something there. And because Jared, when I heard you say, I was thinking about this because your default is an under. And when you say that, I'm thinking there's something there that, because you've been doing this, we've been doing this a long time. You've been watching a lot of college football, doing a lot of analyzing spreads and totals specifically. We nickname you cousin totals, right? And so when I hear that from you, I'm thinking there's some experiences or some data there that you may not be able to exactly put your finger on, but your gut telling you this is an indication that there's probably something here.
Yeah, and maybe it's just, if I'm trying to be more specific with it, maybe I wouldn't say Sideline has a weakness necessarily, but one thing you can glean from watching Sideline enough is when you have two of these fast tempo teams, I think that may be the one area that it struggles with the most is high totals. And so the fact that it's still giving you a B grade on the over here is just, that's a sign to me, because Sideline gets really difficult to play totals, where the line's set in the mid 60s. There's going to be few and far between where it tells you to play over in those situations. And so the fact that it still says over, I mean, it just matches with, like I said, what I feel in this one.
And I was going to even come at it from a slightly different angle, which is I think the model has really been hesitant to play overs in SEC games. And I don't think there's nothing in the model that says SEC means play the under or slow it down or whatever. It's just, I've noticed like there's a lot of these SEC games that the model's liking the under, and it's not always right. Obviously, It's not always wrong either. But then, it's like it's saying to go over in an SEC game always kind of catches my eye a little bit. of like, oh, we don't do that a lot. So maybe there's something there. Again, anything can happen in one game. Any coach can come out with any game plan, but the tempo's there for sure. And like you said, we've seen some evidence in these teams that there can be some quick scores. And if Tennessee If it has anything like that Georgia game, then I think there's
Yeah.
a good chance that we get some fireworks somewhere where there's boom, 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 back and forth. Levy loves to do that, would love to get that kind of game. And that can really help overcome some of the weaknesses that we would have, in that it's not easy to get a total into the 60s. That can give us a little bit of that cushion. After dark, we like to close with the late games. Only two, and it's really questionable because, if we call this after dark 9 p.m., we've kind of used this as about the cut point for after dark. But this is the second latest slate game on the slate, Louisiana Tech at UTEP. We're going to lay the 4 with La Tech, a B grade, because, Jared, we didn't have to cover this game. So this is not us trying to say we need an after dark pick, because this game could have easily been in a different segment. And I think we had talked about putting it in a different segment, probably that you don't got to watch them, because at 9 o'clock, we'll still be watching Oregon, Penn State, and Alabama, Georgia. We will not be watching this game. Or if it is, it might be up in a little screen somewhere on the side, because we've got 7 screens up.
Yeah.
So we didn't have to cover this, but you still like this as a B grade. That has not looked. Is that really what this boils down to? Or is it more you think Louisiana Tech might actually have a bit of a pulse?
Well, so I would say look at where Louisiana Tech's defense is rated. That's the number one thing. Like, for a Conference USA team, having a number 64 anything is really good. So that's part of it. The other thing is this feels just like last week's game with Louisiana Tech and Southern Miss, and I think Sideline projected like they should be favored by 7.5. We laid 3, and they won that game by 27 points. Not saying that La Tech's going to win this game by 27 points, but UTEP is of the caliber where Louisiana Tech could win this game by 10 points, and it never really feels that close. So for me, this is about Louisiana Tech. So I feel like they do have one thing that they're pretty good at relative to their competition in their defense, and UTEP, who is just kind of a little bit flailing, I guess.
Yeah, lost the opener by double digits to Utah State. They lost last week at home to Louisiana Monroe. The only thing you could hang your hat on is that they played Texas close in a game that, again, we're not talking Texas this week. We talked about them last week a little bit. They scored just enough for that game to get over, in a game that we said Sam Houston would be lucky to score. And I think the model projected on average to get 1 point. I don't think they scored, did they?
Yeah.
It was 55 zip.
Yeah.
Texas finally, Arch Manning finally doing what he needed to do. We talked about it earlier. Necessary but not sufficient.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was Arch Manning. Like, that was necessary for him to get out of the college football quarterback doghouse, but it was not sufficient to say you've solved a problem, because of how bad he looked against San Jose State with Chuck Butler and UTEP. And I think if you're hanging your hat on what UTEP did against Texas, I think that was all about Texas. That was all about Arch Manning and that weird situation, Texas not really caring, etc. I think you saw the real UTEP last week. And you saw them in week 1, losing to Utah State by 12. You saw them last week, losing at home to ULM. And like you said, this La Tech team, relative for this conference, good enough to go out there and take care of business. A Louisiana Tech team that hung in there with LSU and, looked respectable. UTEP nowhere near them. So you had a lot of great reasons to back La Tech last week. Same thing here.
Yeah, and, as soon as I say this is going to be the death knell for them, but it's not only Sideline who thinks La Tech is, decent or has some good pieces for Conference USA. I saw like ESPN's latest projections where that La Tech has like a 60% chance to win Conference USA. So, which I think says more about the rest of Conference USA is really bad, but it's not just Sideline that's seeing something with La Tech. There's other projection systems out there that are kind of seeing something similar.
Yeah, a Louisiana Tech team that really kind of snuck up on us, I think, a little bit with regards to Conference USA, because we were expecting that to be Western Kentucky. We were expecting that to be Jacksonville State. We were expecting it to be Liberty, but all 3 of those teams have some question marks. We knew that Sam Houston State would take a step back, thought they might figure it out later in the season, but we knew that they were going to struggle to start, and sure enough, they've looked really rough. But we didn't talk about Louisiana Tech at all, and they're coming in looking like maybe the class of a very weak conference.
Yep.
Last one here, our late game BYU at Colorado. We're going to lay the 6.5 with BYU as a B grade. Model says they won by an average of 10. I think BYU's good, and I think Colorado is meh. I mean, it's really that simple. A situation where, both these teams have good home field advantages being in the altitude, and that kind of makes Colorado's home field advantage here not worth as much because they're not playing a team that's not used to that altitude.
Right, right.
And so I like laying the 6.5 here with BYU. I'd like laying 6 better, but I like that we get the win on 7. And honestly, even if we're talking about the Big 12 being a bunch of close games every week, there's going to be games that are just someone goes out there and wins by 17. And like that feels like BYU could do that in this game, right?
Yeah, I'm just wondering because it seemed coming into the season that either Salter or Lewis was going to be the starter for Colorado to open the season. And, Dion even took both of them to media days, which is unheard of. He's like, I don't know who's going to be my starter, but, Dion being Dion, he's like, hey, I want to bring both of them, talk to both of them, whatever the case may be. And then the fact that they went to their third stringer to start against Houston, and now they're back to Salter, who looked really good last week. To me at this point, it seems like Salter should be the guy. He's got the most experience. I feel like he's probably the most trustworthy of all of them. But the fact that Dion is still having questions, just something about it doesn't feel right. And the other thing is that, we always want to back a team that has a quarterback that wears number 47 in Bo Bachmeier. And I saw something the other day. They asked him about it. And he's like, yeah, when I started playing football, I was running back. I was number 47. I moved to quarterback. I just kept the number. He's like, I feel like it's a good thing to get me in the right mindset to play quarterback in a certain way. So I just want to back a guy who wears number 47. It just sounds awesome. But just back to Colorado. Something feels weird. And I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. But something's weird.
I completely agree. I think it's like it's something's off. It's what I'd say about it with Dion specifically is if any head coach, right, has had his flaws discussed on national television more. I don't know who it is, Bill Belichick maybe. I don't know, but everyone loves to harp on his flaws. But the guy knows talent. That is very, very clear that he's got a lot of strengths and he knows talent, and yet that whole quarterback thing, it's telling us something. And that doesn't mean that we know exactly what it's telling us, because we don't have to know exactly what it's telling us as much as, like you said, it's something's off. Like the 5-star coming in maybe just isn't ready yet. And that he knows all those things, right? And that's why he went to the third stringer rather to stop, I think, than going to Lewis at that point. But, the fact that Salter got benched, right? There's something there and it's telling us something. The other thing that's telling us something, I think, you look at this BYU team, the model likes them this year, thinks they're, one of the top teams in the Big 12. They were one of the top teams in the Big 12 last year. They were able to go on the road last year and beat Baylor. They were able to go on the road last year and beat Central Florida. They were able to go on the road last year and beat Utah. They went on the road to Arizona State and only lost by 5. And that was, of course, an Arizona State team that won the conference.
Right.
They went to the Alamo Bowl and played Colorado, a much better Colorado team than this, and kicked the crap out of them 36-14. So you may say there's a little bit of that revenge angle here from Colorado. I'm going to go a little bit different and say, how can you have revenge when the 3 best players from that team are all now gone? And on top of that, you've replaced them with weaker players who didn't play in that game and got bullied. I mean, they got manhandled in that game. BYU just dominated them physically. And I'm like, why won't the same thing happen here? Like, this BYU team is as good as they were last year. This Colorado team isn't. And so, again, you're not as good as you look at your best. You're not as bad as you look at your worst. Bowl games can get weird. But I mean, the level of physicality that BYU used to just, I think they were up like 20 zip at half. I mean, it wasn't even close. Right. And I'm like, I'm not really worried about a home field thing with the altitude, given BYU plays at altitude. This feels like there's a lot of ways this gets out of hand. And we see kind of a repeat of that Houston game, except maybe even a little bit worse, because the fact that BYU, I still think, is a lot better than Houston. So road game, but not crazy travel. We're going to lay it here with BYU. Folks, that is the show. We've got more paid picks and free picks on Patreon. If you hop over there and sign up, we really appreciate it. I didn't change I forgot to change the slide. I was going to come up with something cute. Monthly honor roll membership, $19.99. And you just get so much information, that Discord chat. Whether you're there or not, thanks for watching, especially sticking around to this point of the show. Like, comment, subscribe. We love your comments. We love interacting with all of y'all, especially, again, those of you who hop in over on the Discord as well. We love answering all your questions. Because, Jared, what do you have to say before we head out?
Stick with college football this weekend. There's good games, but the 2 after dark games, there's only 2. I mean, only like 1 game starting after 8 Eastern or something. It's ridiculous, or 9 Eastern, I guess. there's always like 1 or 2 weeks in the season that's like that. Just bear with us. Even college football needs to take a breather every once in a while. Go to bed at a decent time this weekend. That's what I'm going to be doing, and not sitting up and watching college football at midnight. Go to sleep at a decent time. We'll stay up late next weekend.
Yeah, like once the Oregon game and the Alabama game finish up, like time to go to bed. If for whatever reason those get out of hand, maybe go to bed before they finish, right? Get some rest, and then surely we'll be back with some other late games. Because a lot of times those late games are hard to not watch. Although last week that Cal game being an aftershock game was one that was hard to watch.
Yeah.
In such a one of the more confusing weeks. So we survived last week, which had a bunch of weird things happening in it, and hopefully we can then get back to profiting this weekend. Again, we thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all those things. And folks, again, remember our only goal here: make more when we win than we lose. You can do that with the right model, with the right mindset. That's what we try to do here, and that's what we hope we can do each and every week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see y'all next